Stand up! Or maybe I should say sit down, New York Giants fans, the way we've been playing as of late. But thank you to everybody for tuning in. Let me just say hello to a couple people in the chat. Bob Wells, Brownie, Jared Williams, Sports Influencer, Kevin Rodriguez, A Million, Archstick, Real People, Paul Ellis. Thank you to everybody for being here. Really appreciate all the support that you guys always show. Got MikeTooNice on the channel. We did this last year. We alternated channels. It was on his channel before the year started. Mike was on vacation. Kind of got a week delayed, by alternating channels this week. But we got a lot to talk about, Mike. If you guys are not familiar with Mike's channel, the link is going to be in the description below. So please give him a look. Does great content over there. Always like getting a different perspective with the New York Giants. But Mike, man, how you been, buddy?
Well, I guess as good as we can be, right? I mean, even I didn't expect to be 0-3. I expected 1-2 at the worst, and here we are again, just facing hell, I guess, as Giants fans, and it's to the point where even the fans that have hated each other over the years are just kind of like revolting together. It's kind of weird. So it's not what I wanted or expected, but it's just it's not looking good so far, and they have to fix things very fast. And once again, Sunday's a must-win. I mean, last week was a must-win, but Sunday once again is a must-win for the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I try to be as positive as I can, and I try to really give this rebuild as best of an opportunity as I could, because as a New York fan, Mike, New York fans don't like going through rebuilds. It's tough to rebuild in New York. So I knew it was going to be tough sledding when Gettleman took the job. And yeah, there was a lot of things he did that I was not in love with. But I tried to be as fair as I possibly could to him and give him as long as an opportunity as I thought he deserved. 2019, I've said it all along. After that year, I would have either kept both Shurmur and Gettleman, which is what I would have done, or I would have fired both. When they fired Shurmur, they kept Gettleman. Probably not the best of ideas. And then I think you had to give Gettleman 2 more years after that because you brought in Judge. And this offseason, the New York Giants showed a lot of aggression, and I think we all expected them to come out and, like you said, at a bare minimum, get off to a 1-2 start. At a bare minimum, the Atlanta game had to be a must-win. That's the way I looked at that going into that game. Now we get off to an 0-3 start. We're all too familiar with it, and when you look at the schedule coming up, it's not too bright. But we're going to answer some questions for you guys in the chat today. I'm sure me and Mike, we're going to talk about the first 3 games, some of the things that I guess, maybe some small silver linings, and obviously a lot of things that this team needs to work on. But Jai, thank you so much. Preseason next week. Also, you're talking about the Knicks. Yeah. Also, is it just me or did Darnay Holmes play last week? I didn't hear his name at all. Yeah, I don't think
I just saw he played 1 snap. I looked this question up. 1 snap last week.
They had Kadarius Williams in there basically for a lot of the game. And he barely played last week, Jai. That's a good call by you. He barely played, and he's been a bit underwhelming. I thought Darnay Holmes would be better for the Giants his second year, and he did struggle a bit last year, but he didn't. Yeah, he was barely in there at all. So a good call by Jai.
I had high hopes for him this year too. It's like disappointing that by week 3 he's out of the rotation. I mean, we'll see how it goes the rest of the year, but like that's bad. 1 snap the entire game. I mean, it's just not what you want to see from a guy in his second year now. So
yeah, and obviously Aaron Robinson going down hasn't helped either. He's a guy that could have stepped in as well if Darnay Holmes wasn't performing well. Hopefully he gets back soon so we get to see a good, get a look at him. He was a guy I was kind of excited about that we traded up for in the 3rd round. But Mike, so far, and I'm going to get to a couple of your questions, guys, believe me, but Mike, so far, obviously we don't have a lot of positive to say, but I want to start off the stream by talking about a few of the silver linings so far, and then we're going to get into the nitty gritty. This year, a player that I think we all, and you and me both liked him a lot, but a player that a lot of people had major question marks going into the year was Andrew Thomas. That's all you heard, especially after the preseason game against New England. Rightfully so, looked really bad in that game. After that game, I tried to tell myself, all right, maybe he's trying to work on some technique. But the way Andrew Thomas has performed so far, and I watched the game film by Bobby, did a great job. If there is one bright spot in this team so far this year, and it is good news because I think we agree it's probably the second most important position on a football team, the blindside protector. Andrew Thomas has really taken a huge step up this year to, I think, further assure us that he could be a franchise left tackle.
Yeah, I was really confident that he would have a bounce back year. And I'll admit, after that Patriots preseason game, I was like, oh boy, what are we expecting here? But he's came in and did a complete 180 this year. I don't know if it's him playing healthy because, as we know, he played through an injury last year. But I feel like a lot of it is technique and being more comfortable in the NFL as well. And not having to worry about your left tackle is such a nice thing to have. And, the rest of the offensive line, you can't say the same about them, but they haven't been that good. But having a left tackle being really good and really consistent, That's going to help your team a lot. Now, we still need a right tackle because right now Solder's not cutting it, as we know, and we have Billy Price falling over and Bredesen, turnstile over at left guard. So there's a lot more issues. But if you just look at Andrew Thomas being a 4th overall pick, the Giants needed him to have a big year. And so far through 3 weeks, he's definitely off to that.
Yeah, I think he's been by far the biggest bright spot on this team. The rest of the offensive line, not so much.
Yeah.
I know that they've done better than we expected, but still not good. You look at this offensive line, Mike, right now, the only guy that I could say for sure is a part of the future of this line is Andrew Thomas. And I think we're going to go into next year, at least me, I don't know about you on your channel, but I'm definitely going to be pounding the table for them to draft a couple of early offensive linemen next year. Make no mistake about it. Yeah. The other guy that I really want to talk about that a lot of New York Giants fans are really hyped about, are you buying into Azeez Ojulari? Or do you think it's a little fluky first 3 games, or are you buying in?
No, I'm buying it. I did like him as a prospect, and I told you in the preseason show I had 7 sacks for him this year. I wish I said more now. I mean, it's looking like he might get more. He's getting the snaps, and the Giants need it because so far, I don't know if it's the injury or what, Lorenzo Carter's not making the impact we expected, even O'Shane Ximines when he's out there. The Giants needed somebody, and Azeez Ojulari, outside of Leonard Williams, who is quietly having a better year than most fans are making it out to be because he's not living up to the contract. But outside of Leo, like Ojulari is the only guy who's getting any type of pressure. So no, it's not the biggest surprise. I thought maybe there would be a bit of a learning curve, but the fact that he's just off to a great start right now is really good. He hasn't been perfect. He could be better against the run, as we know, but just getting to the quarterback and getting those pressures is something this team needs badly. And the fact that they found that in the 2nd round on a trade back, by the way, so great move by the front office and Gettleman. That's awesome. So we have to look forward to Ojulari, and this Giants team may not have many building blocks going forward, but he looks to be one of them. So that's something to be confident about.
And outside of those 2, Mike, is there, and Gano, yeah. Is there anybody else on this team that has exceeded your expectations?
Exceeded my expectations
in terms of like a long-time potential building block.
I know he dropped the interception, and people might hate me for this, but I think Adoree Jackson has so far stayed healthy, first and foremost, which is important. And number 2, like he's been fine outside of like that dropped interception, which could have lost us the game.
I just thought about this. I'm not reading the chat. I'll say Sterling Shepard as well, but he's hurt.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Sterling Shepard, but he's hurt. But go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I figured Shepard was gonna have a nice year. I don't know why. I just felt like it. I felt like I don't know. I don't want to say he took this year more serious, but he just showed up looking like he was in great shape and whatnot. So I figured he might have a good year. Seeing him hurt already is obviously not what you want to see. But yeah, I mean, outside of those, I don't know who would really have exceeded my expectations so far. There's guys not living up to expectations. That's for sure. Dexter Lawrence and even Danny Shelton, who I liked, guys like that.
Leonard Williams.
Leonard Williams even. I don't know, honestly. I want to see Kadarius Toney. I think we have a question about him next. Get used more because he showed on a couple plays on Sunday that he can make guys miss. And the Giants don't have much of a yards after catch guy. I think a stat was put out there that Daniel Jones's receivers have the least yards after catch amongst any quarterback right now in the league. So they're not doing him any favors. Why not bring in a guy and use him? Like, it just makes no sense to draft Toney in the 1st round and not use him. So I do want to see more of him. And if he doesn't play this week with 2 guys out, I don't know what to think, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And that speaks to John Super Chat. He says, it's Joker time. He will have a great game. Hey, if he's ever going to have a great game, it's going to be this one. Mike, because, I mean, Darius Slayton looks like he's going to be out. Shepard looks like he's going to be out. I mean, I know Colin Johnson looked pretty good last game, but how much of a role is he going to have going
He's exceeded my expectations. I'll put it that way.
That's a good
Colin
one.
Johnson.
That's a good one. And he was a guy that I actually liked in that draft. In the 5th, 6th round area because of his height, alone out of Texas. So, yeah, he actually looked pretty good in that last game. So that was, I guess, a nice little pickup by the New York Giants. But other than that, and we're going to get into the bad stuff, believe me, guys, I don't have much positive to say about this team right now. In terms of the way that they've come out and played. Yes, I know they could have easily beaten Washington and they could have easily beaten Atlanta, but they should have stomped out Atlanta. They had 3 extra days to prepare for that game. They're missing their number 1 corner. They're missing their number 2 wide receiver, and they only put up 14 points against the defense that was surrendering over 30 points a game coming in. So not a good showing by the Giants last week. Kayla, man, thank you very much. We need to turn it around now that I met DJ. Yeah, you showed me that picture on Twitter, man. That was pretty cool. Kalen got a chance to meet DJ at his local supermarket. So nice. That was pretty cool, man. But Absolutely, man. And I'm just going to read a couple of my members. They don't pop up on here for some reason. Stephen Lee, what's going on, man? Thank you for being a member. He says, hi, you boys. So sick of us having a head coach who, now we're going to get into Joe Judge, who can't do the basics. We won't be a winning team until this changes. Challenges time control and game management. Let's talk about Joe Judge. Going into the year, you and me were both pretty high on Joe Judge. I think very high on Joe Judge. Based off what he did last year, I know that you had nothing but complimentary things to say about him, whether it was on your YouTube channel, whether it was on Twitter. And I liked it. It looked like he was building a program. It looked like the players really did enjoy playing for him. And the Giants, even though we may have overestimated them a bit, when you go back and look at last year's schedule, and I'll be the first to say I'm a fan. You get into it. You're excited going into the next year. But the previous year, they won 6 games. 5 of them were against backup quarterbacks or Carson Wentz. So if we're being honest with ourselves, maybe we overhyped them a little bit. No, not maybe, definitely, based off the way they've performed so far. But give me your thoughts on Joe Judge. Are you off the Joe Judge train, or do you think that he could turn this around?
I still want to give him time. He's obviously not getting fired now, so I might as well stay on the train while he's the head coach. It's weird because like we had such high expectations and Judge was doing all the right things last year. It's kind of like, if I can make an analogy, it's like dating someone and everything looks great, and then you move in together and then it's all of a sudden not great at all, and you realize it's the opposite. It's like, kind of a Colin Cowherd analogy here, but like that's kind of the way I look at it. Like, now that we're seeing more of Joe Judge, is this really who he is as a coach? Because the guy who preaches discipline and all these things and being fundamentally sound and playing aggressive, and he won't go for it on 4th and 3 from Atlanta's 39 in a 7-6 game. Things like that just really piss you off. And it's just a lot of stuff that's mental errors, and the Giants, like, they're just shooting themselves in the foot. And I feel like if Judge was really preaching what he was saying to us, even the media and things like that, we wouldn't be making these boneheaded mistakes and losing these games. Like, I feel like there's just winning teams and losing teams. The Giants just don't know how to win right now. And it's been like that even before Judge got here, in fairness to him. But just based on he talks a big game and whatnot, we haven't seen it so far. Everything he preaches is kind of going the opposite way. So yeah, I'm not off of Joe Judge yet, but my expectations went from here to there, based on what I've seen through 3 games. And I don't think he's won a challenge yet in his career so far, right? Like, he's been bad on challenges too. Yeah, it's just, I don't know if that's for this year or his entire career, but I think I saw a career. So it's got to get better. I mean, it's not only just the players playing like crap, but even the coaches look terrible. And we had, we knew how we felt about Garrett. We didn't have the highest expectations, but even Graham and Judge, guys that we really liked, are just not doing it for us right now. So obviously they're going to have time to make it change. And I feel like if you're not going to fire Garrett off of this performance, I feel like he'll be here for a few more weeks at least, because this is as bad as it gets. You mentioned it, coming off extra 10 days rest, I believe, and playing Atlanta without their cornerback one and putting up 14 at home is a disgusting offensive outlook. So if not going to fire Garrett now, then when's it going to happen? I don't know. But yeah, as for the other two in Judge and Graham, it is very disappointing so far.
Yeah, to me, I know Giants fans were out on Garrett before the year started for the most part. The other two, like you said, have been super disappointing. I will give Graham credit this week. I did think they came out with a pretty good defensive game plan, but Judge overall, man, the lack of aggression, the team doesn't look prepared, and he's Mr. Discipline. You would think that this team would, I think we've committed 23 penalties in 3 weeks. We committed 81 all of last year. I mean, it's bad, Mike, and that cannot continue. The challenge stat's a really good one. I was thinking about it as you said it. The challenge this week was a horrible one. It was one in which you knew they probably were not going to be able to win, and the reward that you would have grabbed from it was not worth it. The risk did not match the reward. So yeah, Judge to me, and he needs to be much more aggressive. I say it every single week, but it's the truth. You have got to go for it on that 4th and 3. And if you know you're going to punt a 4th and 3, you got to do a better job than calling the play on 3rd and 3 where you threw it down 30 yards down the sideline. Like, I'm fine with that. I like the aggression there, but if you're going to do it, go for it on 4th down.
Yep.
So overall, I think Judge has to be much more aggressive as a coach, and his team just lacks focus, and they've been sloppy so far this year. And I hope he can turn it around, man, because I don't want to have to go through a 4th head coach in the matter of 6 years.
Yeah, me and you sat here last year and said Judge has to be here for at least 4 years, and here we are talking about possibly moving on, not even 2 years into it. So it's bad.
The thing that's most discouraging, Mike, is you agree with me on this. He had as much to do with Gettleman him and Gettleman did this jointly. They built this team over the last 2 years.
Yep.
So it's his program, it's his players, it's his coaches, and they're just not getting the job done. And I think as Giants fans, we're getting sick of it. I mean, it's 0-2, 0-3 every single year, and it's the method in which they're losing these games. And the thing that's so discouraging is you look at our upcoming schedule, and it's brutal. Our next 7 games, Mike, you're playing 3 of the top, probably the 3 best teams in football, with the Rams, with the Chiefs, and with the Bucks. And then you're playing the Raiders, who are 3-0. You're playing the Panthers, who are 3-0. You're playing the Cowboys, who look really good. The schedule just doesn't let up, and hopefully they turn it around. I'm not going to hold my breath, but hopefully they turn it around, and who knows? It's the Giants. Sometimes they surprise us, but they better start winning some football games. As far as Garrett goes, and I'm going to get to a couple of your guys' chats. Don't want you guys to think I'm ignoring you. As far as Garrett goes, man, listen, man, I tried to not even defend Garrett, but I tried not to make him the punching bag for the longest time. This past week, for them not to call one read option play after the week in which Daniel Jones had the previous week, to not try to utilize those legs in some way, shape, or form, to not throw the ball down the field at all. He had 2 throws where he attempted over, I think, 20 yards the entire game. One was the incompletion on the 3rd and 3. The other was the completion of C.J. Board. For him not to open up the playbook at all this week, and the red zone offense has been even worse than last year. We were ranked 31st in the league. We're 3 of 9 so far in terms of red zone conversion rate, and we've thrown no touchdowns inside the red zone. So, and that has to fall at least somewhat on the play calling. I'm not trying to make Garrett the scapegoat. I do think Judge has a lot to do with the offensive game planning as well, and some of that also falls on the players for not executing. The offensive line blew up a drive, if you remember, on the screen pass to Evan Ingram, where I think Bredesen got destroyed, and then Billy Price got destroyed on the very next play, where Jones got sacked within a second, and Jones, of course, with the fumble on the snap. So it's not all on Garrett. Some of it definitely falls on the players, but I've come to the point where what other changes can we make? We need to try to spark this team in some way, shape, or form. And if they didn't fire Garrett off that performance, I agree with you. I think he's getting at least 2 or 3 more weeks. And we'll see where it goes from there. Hopefully it gets better.
I was saying before the season started, if we start slow offensively and Garrett really craps the bed against Atlanta, who we projected to be a bad defense coming into this year, I figured he might be fired after week 3. And it just went as bad as it possibly could, you would think. I mean, you could get shut out, obviously, yeah, but it's the Falcons. So, it went as bad as we can. And you mentioned it. How do you not run a read option from what we saw in Washington? Like, don't these guys go back and watch a ton of film and see what's working and what's not working? Like, how do you not do that once? It's just very puzzling. And it's like Jason Garrett, like, even his philosophy just isn't correct. Like I did in my video yesterday, I kind of ranted about Garrett. When Freddie Kitchens took over that 1 week in week 15 against the Browns, because Garrett had COVID, they had I think it was Colt McCoy at quarterback. So his average air yards per pass attempt was like 9.1 or something. And with Daniel Jones and Jason Garrett, his was like 7.2 or somewhere around there. So you can just tell based on like the change in play caller, not the playbook. You can't change the whole playbook in a week, as we know. Just based on the play caller, Colt McCoy, who is nowhere near the deep ball passer that Daniel Jones is, was going deep on an average of 2 more yards per pass attempt. Like, that just shows you right there that it's the same team, it's the same playbook, just a different play caller. What is Jason Garrett not getting that Freddie Kitchens got for 1 game against a pretty good Browns defense? I don't get it, and that's why I feel that we have to move on here, because as I said in my video, firing Garrett doesn't solve everything. We're not going to be a top 10 offense without Garrett. It doesn't matter. But at least Freddie Kitchens will see what we can get out of Daniel Jones, because I have this legitimate fear now that we're going to enter year 4 of Daniel Jones and not know who the hell he is. Because how can you know right now who Daniel Jones is in this offense? The dink and dunk, the curl offense, and the stick route offense. How are you supposed to know who he is? It's just, once again, it's Alex Smith all over again, but runs faster. It's like you have to unleash this kid and do what he did back in 2019. Will he throw some more interceptions? Sure, it's going to happen. But in return, we'll get more explosive plays, and that's how you win in today's NFL on offense.
That's the thing I can't stand about this football team and the way they operate right now. If Daniel Jones makes one mistake, and a quarterback can't operate this way, Mike. You see Tom Brady opening week. He threw 2 picks. The best of the best make mistakes. But the way that this offense is operating, the way that this team is playing, Daniel Jones has to play mistake-free football for the Giants even have an opportunity to win a football game. You cannot win football games in the NFL that way. You've got to take shots. You've got to try to create big plays. Why did we bring in all these playmakers this year, Mike, if we're not trying to create more electricity on offense? And listen, it's not all Garrett's fault. The offensive line is not good. We have not been able to establish a ground game outside of Daniel Jones's legs. Saquon Barkley hasn't looked like himself. I'm not putting all the blame on Garrett, but a lot of it certainly has to fall in his lap when you look at how pedestrian this offense has been since he's been here. So they need to shake it up. And Judge is putting, in my opinion, his job on the line by not making a change. And hopefully Judge and Garrett get this offense going. We'll see this week. But let's answer a couple questions here. Joe, man, thank you very much. Do you think losing Dalvin Tomlinson, that's a good question, really affected Leonard Williams? Good question, Joe. Mike, I'll let you start on that, buddy.
I mean, you would have to think to a certain degree, yes, because when I looked back, well, we saw these tweets last year of guys that were double teamed the most out of defensive linemen. Dexter Lawrence and Dalvin Tomlinson were near the top, and it kind of gave Leonard Williams more favorable matchups and more one-on-one matchups. But as I think Justin Pennick from Talking Giants said, most of Leonard Williams' sacks last year came with Dalvin Tomlinson off the field. So it's not all him, but I do think there is some level of it. And I don't think Dalvin Tomlinson, he played well on Sunday, but he only played like 25 snaps for the Vikings. It's not like he's like amazing so far this year. And, I'm not really a person. I'm a positional value guy. As you know, Dalvin Tomlinson was more of a run stopper. I was okay moving on from him in favor of Leonard Williams, who is a better football player. But now maybe more offensive, the offenses we're facing are paying more attention to Leonard Williams because there is no longer a Dalvin Tomlinson on the defensive line, and now it's Austin Johnson, who's been okay this year, but like he's not Dalvin Tomlinson. So yeah, it's definitely some type of correlation, but I don't think that's the entire reason why Leonard Williams is not playing to the level of which he's being paid at.
Yeah, I think it's a part of it, the reason why the defense has come out sluggish, but it's not the main reason. And I knew going into the offseason, after they extended Logan Ryan, which I know a lot of Giants fans were completely behind, I'm not in love with it. I love him as a player. Great leader. Captain of the football team. Would I have rather used that money on Dalvin Tomlinson? Probably.
They overpaid. I think they did. I love Logan Ryan. I think they overpaid.
Yeah. Would I have rather used that money keeping Kevin Zeitler? Probably. But it is what it is. They decided not to do that. Having Dalvin Tomlinson on this football team absolutely makes Leonard Williams a better player. But what I'll say to that, Mike, is they had to pick one. And everybody will say, well, they should have picked Dalvin Tomlinson. But what I'll say to that is, Mike, if Dalvin Tomlinson was here and Leonard Williams was not, how do you think Dalvin Tomlinson would play?
Yeah, we'd be even worse probably, I feel like.
To think that Dalvin Tomlinson definitely benefited from Leonard Williams at least equally as to how Leonard Williams benefited from Dalvin Tomlinson. And unfortunately in the NFL with a salary cap, you can only keep one.
Well, here's what we should have done. Sorry to cut you off. We should have extended Leonard Williams after his half season here and get a massive discount because he hadn't had the big season yet. And then we could have signed Dalvin Tomlinson as well. So it's kind of just the front office not having foresight, which is what I'm used to at this point, unfortunately.
football guy, man, thank you very much. Says, my two guys, thank you for keeping us all going. Thank you for popping in, man. Appreciate it. And Caden with the member chat says, we are in trouble. We're going to get into how much trouble we're into throughout the stream. But yes, we are. We're not in great shape right now, Caden. There's no sugarcoating it. And let's get into Matthew. I think he was next. Matthew says, is Joe Judge to blame for Patrick Graham's fall from grace? I mean, here's what I'll say, Mike. I think last year, the head coach always has to take some responsibility on both sides of the ball. Always has to take at least some responsibility. But I think last year, everybody gave Patrick Graham a lot of credit, as rightfully so. This year, if you gave him all the credit, you have to give him all the blame. That's the way I look at it. It's his job to come out with a defensive game plan in order to win football games. And I'll give him credit this past week. I do think he mixed up the blitz well. I thought he actually had he did a much better job at disguising his coverages. I remember there were times in the game where he only sent 2 guys, dropped 9 guys back in coverage. Like, it definitely looked a lot more exotic or different in terms of the looks he was presenting Matt Ryan. And you noticed that Atlanta was struggling getting first downs on 3rd and 4, specifically early in that football game. So I thought he came out with a much better game plan this past week. But the first 2 weeks, Patrick Graham looked like he was lost in terms of this defense. Wasn't putting players in the right situations to succeed, especially the second week. The first week, we were getting pressure. Bridgewater was making some really good plays.
Yeah.
The second week, the defensive game plan was beyond atrocious. Does Judge deserve some responsibility? Yeah, but I think the bulk of it falls on Graham.
Yeah, I would say I can't blame Judge entirely, but he is supposed to be the CEO and overlooking everything here. So yeah, when it comes to Patrick Graham, it's just it's like the lack of aggression that really is like annoying me. And we saw it better in week 3, as you mentioned. Like, some people blame the Giants defense for week 3's loss. I don't. 17 points to the Falcons is fine with me. You should be able to win on that. But yeah, I mean, he's been playing too much zone this year, and like, it just reminded me of like James Betcher, how it'd be like 3rd and 4 and the corners are 10 yards off. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, at least like now you have Dory Jackson and James Bradbury, and you're like kind of refusing to play man. I know the slot corner position is not really in great shape right now, but the fact that you have those two guys on the outside who are really good players and like not taking advantage of it is pretty weird. Now, I still hold out hope that Graham can figure it out because he showed us so much, greatness last year. But so far, something has changed, and I can't really put together what it is. But I do hope at some point Graham starts to get better again.
I think they, and maybe this is the optimistic side of me because I definitely am a glass half full guy. I don't think the defense is ever going to meet my preseason expectations, but I do have faith that the defense is going to be much better throughout the course of the year. The problem, though, Mike, is you look at our schedule. And the offenses that we were supposed to be able to beat up against were the first 2 weeks, Teddy Bridgewater and obviously Tyler Heineke. After that, now you're playing the Saints. Obviously, Sean Payton, a brilliant offensive play caller. That's going to be tough sledding. You got the Cowboys, one of the top 5 offenses in football, the Rams, the Bucks, the Chiefs. So even if the defense does improve, they're still not going to be holding these teams to under 20, 24 points. I mean, you're going up against some of the best offenses the league has to offer. And you look at last year, Mike, and I'll be the first to say this is something I overlooked going into the year. Look at the quarterbacks we played. I mean, we played 5 good quarterbacks last year. We played Baker Mayfield, who to me is a slightly above average quarterback in a great situation. We played Russell Wilson, who we played great against. We played Lamar Jackson. We played Tom Brady. And we played Kyler Murray. And outside of that, we played Ben Roethlisberger, who's at best a middle-of-the-road quarterback at this point, and a ton of backups. We played the Bengals backup. We played Andy Dalton twice. We played Carson Wentz twice, who was like the worst quarterback in football last year. Like, we beat up on the worst of the worst. This year, the schedule defensively is much more challenging unless all these quarterbacks get hurt like they did last year. So even if the defense gets much better, I have my doubts if the defense could still hold some of these teams that we got coming up on our schedule to under 24 to 27 points, which means the offense has to show up and put up 30 if we're going to be able to compete in these football games.
It really does come down to the offense. It doesn't matter if you're holding these, really good offenses to 21, 24 points, because if you can't score over 20 yourself, then you're going to lose. So the offense, it starts with the offense, in my opinion. It's an offensive league. And, as much as we were hoping this defense would be around the top 5 area, it's probably not going to be that way, as you said. But there's no reason why we can't be around last year, somewhere from that 10 to 12 range. I do think we have the talent here. And losing Blake Martinez sucks. I can't really look past that. But Tate Crowder looked really good last week.
I was just going to say, you made me think there's another guy that's been better than I thought he'd be. Tate Crowder's been good this year.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Tate Crowder's
that
been
is
good
one.
this year. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I can't really expect the defense to be great, but I think they could be good enough, which should get you by as long as your offense is putting up points. But that's our problem because the offense rarely puts up points, and that's the issue with this team.
Yeah, no, for sure. The offense is going to have to show up these next 7 weeks if we're going to win games. Matthew, thank you very much. Toney was forced to play more with the injuries to Shep and Slayton last week. This week, he should be part of the game plan and have a big impact. Matt, if he's not part of the game plan this week, I don't know when he's going to be. With those two guys out, I know Colin Johnson, like I said earlier, looked good. Do you think Garrett is capable? And Judge, do you think they're capable?
No.
Of utilizing Kadarius Toney properly, because he's not your run-of-the-mill wide receiver. He's a guy you have to use in a specific type of way. And so far, Mike, I expect him coming out, and maybe we'll see it as he gets more acclimated into the offense. Not only lining up as a wide receiver, I expect him in the backfield. I expect him wildcat. I expect him to line up as the halfback at least 2 or 3 times a game. Try to get him out in open space. They haven't really done that so far this year, but do you think they're creative enough to use Toney in the right way?
Well, my simple answer to that is if you can't, then why the hell did you draft him? That's my answer to it. But yeah, right. I mean, I want him to get 2 or 3 carries in this game. I want him to play in the slot because they have a very tough defense in New Orleans. I feel like we sleep on it sometimes. They are very good, especially against the run. But put him in the slot and just try to see if he can get separation quickly and give Daniel Jones a quick outlet. Obviously, Kyle Rudolph is not the same guy we expected. We might be in a situation where Evan Engram has to get 7+ targets this week, which is probably not what we want. Don't say that name
again, Mike.
Yeah, I know. But that was rough too. Oh my God. He caught his first pass and fumbled last week. It's just typical.
As much as we rag on Evan Engram, Mike, I actually felt bad for him.
No, I do too. Absolutely.
I saw, and I know he's a multimillionaire and fan, so you shouldn't feel bad for him. I saw the guy's face. The guy looked like he was going to break down. Actually, in the moment, after I got done screaming at him, I actually felt bad for him for about 5 seconds.
You could tell he cares, and I think he works very hard. It's just he might be a very unlucky person. I don't know what it is with Ingram. He gets injured a
I think
lot
it's
too,
mental, man.
and
I think
you
it's
think,
mental.
yeah, at this point it might be, unfortunately. I don't know, but I do see he cares and he tries, and it's just, yeah, it sucks. But yeah, back to the Tony point. I don't trust Garrett to make, utilize him the correct way, like the Saints utilize Kamara, for instance. But if you drafted him at 20, why wouldn't you? Or 21, whatever it was. Like, why wouldn't you do it? It just doesn't make sense. Like, I at least play the slot majority of the time. Like, you don't have to use him in the backfield, and then maybe that's too creative for them. I don't know. But at least use him in the slot and see what happens for a full game. You're down to Colin Johnson starting on the outside. There's no reason why Kadarius Toney, your first round pick, shouldn't see at least 80% or more of snaps against New Orleans.
Let me ask you this, and then we're going to get to a couple more questions because it had me thinking. And I didn't hate the Toney pick. I hated trading down personally. I would have stayed and taken Rashawn Slater and I like the value that we got. Don't get me wrong. Once we made the trade, I loved the value that we got. But I thought we should have taken the best available player, and that, in my opinion, was Rashawn Slater, who you could actually make an argument is the offensive rookie of the year, the way he's performed so far. Jamar Chase probably is. But if you go back in time, do you take Slater, Parsons, or do you trade down there if you're the Giants?
I was a big Parsons guy, but based on the Giants roster construction and what they needed, I may have leaned Slater. But at the end of the day, I do like the trade. I'm not gonna lie, like
The
that
value's
trade.
good, no doubt
That
about it.
trade, yeah, the trade would have been very hard for me as a GM to turn down. I would have been like, first round pick, Bears, they might suck next year. Because even coming into this year, Chris, being realistic, I didn't expect to win the Super Bowl. I will say that. I don't think many of us did. So I'm kind of looking towards, like, not looking at next year, because this year was big. They had to, like, make the playoffs, as we know, and take a step. But, like, was Rashawn Slater going to be the difference between, like, making the playoffs and not making the playoffs? I mean, you can argue maybe, but, like, at the end of the day, I do want that first round pick because the Bears are looking like a bottom 10 team in football, and the Giants may have 2 top 10 picks next year. So we were looking at a scenario where we were supposed to make a jump and make the playoffs and still have like a lottery pick. I know it's an NBA term, but like, a higher pick because of the Bears, and ours would have been somewhere in the 20s, hopefully, if we made the playoffs. But now, based on how, poorly we've played so far, we may have 2 top 10 picks. So if I can go back in time,
2 top 2 picks.
Yeah. But if I can go back in time, I'm probably still not changing anything. Maybe that's foolish. I don't know. But I do think that pick is very valuable. I think even in a situation where, like, if Daniel Jones doesn't work out, you have the ammo to, like, trade up and get a quarterback, or, like, trade for an established guy. If, Russell Wilson wants out or Deshaun Watson comes out clean, like, you now have the ammo to go out there and do that. So I think I would have stayed with the decision, honestly, looking back on it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious to get your take. Everybody's got their own opinions on it. And obviously, depending on where the Bears finish, and if we hit on that pick, that trade may end up being golden. Yeah. Dave Gettleman's just probably not going to get to make the pick. Louis, thank you very much. Trade out Judge for Kitchens. Problem solved. Head coach? I'm going to disagree. Now, Kitchens for Garrett, I still don't think the problem's solved because it's still the same scheme. I agree he's a better play caller, more than likely at least. Kitchens did a good job with Mayfield in Mayfield's rookie year, but Kitchens as a head coach was abysmal. With the Cleveland Browns, he was only there for 1 year. So, no, I don't want Kitchens to be on our next head coach. That's for damn sure. But as replacing Garrett, I don't know how much of an improvement would have, but it couldn't hurt. Let's put it that way at this point. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I'm all for replacing Garrett with Kitchens, but not Judge. Can't see that.
Yeah, no. Jason Johnson, man, thank you very much. What's up, Dana? At this point, the only guy giving me any joy is Gano and Andrew Thomas, but I'm a big Hog Molly guy. I hope you guys are ready for the quarterback GM talks in a few weeks. Jason, it's already happening.
Yep.
I don't want to talk about it during the show because we still got 14 games to go, but it's already happening. You're kidding yourself if you don't think New York Giants fans are thinking about the next GM, thinking about players that they're going to draft in next year's draft. And it's sad that as fans, we're already going through this just 3 weeks into a season in which we had as high of expectations as we had. Not that, like you said, Mike, not Super Bowl, but at least contending for the
playoffs. Yeah.
Yeah, at least contending. But we'll see how we do the rest of the year. Big game this week. I'm going to continue to say that until we win. Jonathan, man, thank you very much. Do you think not going for it on the 4th and 3 is just conservative play calling, or just not trusting Daniel Jones to get the job done? I'll start up.
If you don't trust your quarterback to get a 4th and 3 on the 39 against the Falcons, you don't have your quarterback.
Well, That's all I have to say. Words right out of my mouth.
Yep.
Mike, if they decided to go forward with Daniel Jones this year, because they had the option to draft Justin Fields, And Joe Judge believes, who doesn't look very good right now, and Joe Judge believes in Daniel Jones, which he has said he does, which you would think he's a smart guy. He knew when he took this job, Jones was going to be his quarterback for at least the first 2 years, especially based off the rookie season that he had where he showed some promise. You would think he has faith in him, but he is not displaying it. And that's the problem that I have. That's what this year is all about. Mike, I look at week 1. All you have to do is look at week 1 against Denver. They let Teddy Bridgewater go for it on 4th and 7 from midfield.
They didn't care. Yeah.
They let Teddy Bridgewater go for it on 4th and 3 for a gimme field goal, 4th and 1 rather, for a gimme field goal where he made that great play where he stepped on Xavier McKinney. They went for 3 times on 4th down, and Bridgewater made the play each time. In the NFL, in today's NFL, if you cannot trust your quarterback, well, he shouldn't be out there in certain situations. The 4th and 3, they got to go for it. And I'm going to tell you what, Mike, right now, Daniel Jones is the only part of this offense that I at least somewhat trust. Yeah. I'm not saying he's incredible, but he's definitely been at least average. He's been pretty good.
Problem.
He's not been the problem. When you factor in all the aspects of this offense, you have to give this kid an opportunity to try to win football games. The Giants have not allowed him that opportunity.
Yeah. No, as I said before, I'm excited to see how Daniel Jones plays the rest of the 14 games here. But until he's unleashed, I just don't know what he is as a quarterback. But you mentioned it with the Broncos game. I think a lot of it was Vic Fangio, the Broncos head coach, not respecting our offense. I think that has a lot to do with it. And that would have given us bad field position if they didn't get the 4th downs, but they got them every time, it seemed like. So, if you can't rely on your quarterback to get a 4th and 3 versus, I would say, a bottom 3 defense in football on the 39-yard line, on the opponent's 39-yard line, that's a problem. So I would have went for it, of course, but I don't know. And it annoys me how Joe Judge says, like, I'm not afraid to go for it on 4th down. Well, actions are speak louder than words. Like, if you're not going for it there, when are you going for it? Like, the way I talked about that Browns game last year when Kitchens was there, the way they managed that game was something I liked. We were going for 4th downs. We weren't settling for 3 points. They had that stupid play where they tried to throw a touchdown to Nick Gates. I get that. But they still went for it on 4th down. Like, I like their coaching style more in that game as compared to what they've done the rest of the, Joe Judge and Jason Garrett tenure. So I don't know if they have to have more of like that, F it type motto where they kind of went against the Browns and say, we have a backup quarterback. Let's go out there and try and get touchdowns every time. But like, they should be doing that every game. At this point, you're 0-3. What do you have to lose at this point? You're playing the toughest schedule in football the rest of the year. Like, go down swinging. It's too many backwards Ks for baseball people out there. Just too much of not going down swinging. And the Giants, I feel like, if you're going to lose these games, you might as well go out trying instead of being like, let's play not to lose, which is like the favorite motto for this team right now.
That's the way it's been on both sides of the ball. On both sides of the ball. And the other thing that's really pissed me off, Mike, about the defense, and they said they were working on this today, the 2-minute defense has been atrocious. They've given up 3 touchdowns to close out the first half, the first 3 weeks. And you think about how backbreaking that is for the momentum of your football team going in at halftime. Both sides of the ball have not shown aggression. And you can, especially in today's modern day NFL, you cannot play not to lose. Yep. You have to be aggressive and you have to play to win. The Giants aren't good enough to play conservative. Period. End of story. They have to be, especially as they start to go up against better opponents. You have to try to create opportunities for your football team, and hopefully.
I have an example of this too. The Chargers head coach Brandon Staley was in a situation where they were on the Chiefs, I think, 37-yard line with like 2 minutes to go. It was a tie game. And it was 4th and 4. He decides to go for it, but the Chargers had a false start, set them back to a 4th and 9 now. He still went for it, and they got a pass interference, and they went on to win the game. Like, if that was Joe Judge, he probably wouldn't have went for it on 4th and 4 in the first place. But after a false start and losing 5 yards, Brandon Staley had the balls to go for it, and it got them a big win against the Chiefs. I think they're on the road too. Like, that's awesome. That's what I want from a head coach. Like, if you lose from not converting on a 4th down versus the Chiefs, okay, fine. But like, if you give Mahomes the ball back in that situation, down 3, you're probably going to lose. Like, you might as well go for these situations. And I think based on the percentages and the analytics and the numbers, going for it on most 4th and shorts, you have a greater than 50% chance of getting them. And if you play the numbers, you should go for it more times than you don't. Don't go for it on 4th and 15 from your own side of the field in the first half. But in most situations where it's reasonable, you should be going for it.
Yeah, I think when you're going against Mahomes, I think you need to be a little bit more aggressive.
Oh,
yeah. But I think it's circumstantial. But there's no doubt about it. So far, the New York Giants have not been nearly as aggressive as they should be on 4th down offensively. Vodka Drinker says, Dragged Across Concrete is the best movie I've seen in 33.3 years. Never heard of that movie. Sounds like maybe a horror movie. I don't know, vodka drinker, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Never heard of that one, buddy. And let's see what we got here. Phenopolis says trade Darius Slayton for a can of Coca-Cola. I remember last year we were doing the show, Mike, and I think it was the week after Darius Slayton had the big game, the first week of the season.
I know where you're going with this.
40 yards against the Steelers, and plenty of people were starting to buy in that he's a wide receiver number 1, and how fast that has changed.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to say I'm done with Darius Slayton, but I'm off the train, and I want to see Kadarius Toney even when we're fully healthy, getting more reps, because Darius Slayton, and nobody talked about this last year because his drops weren't costing us football games like Evan Ingram's were, but he had a drop problem last year. The guy dropped like 5 or 6 balls on like 65, 70 targets. This year, he dropped the ball in preseason. He dropped 2 balls the first game, dropped the touchdown against Washington. Listen, man, Darius Slayton to me, probably not a part of the future of this football team in terms of being an impact player.
He was still a good pick by Gettleman. Yeah, credit for a 5th-round pick, right? So, but on most good offenses in the NFL, Darius Slayton should be a wide receiver 4. Like when we're having him in the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 conversations, your offense just is not good enough. Like he should be a wide receiver 4, maybe 3, but 4 on most good offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, I didn't miss you, man. It's off here. Mike, man, thank you very much. First DJ pick the fans scream he sucks, and Judge backs down any aggression because he's too conservative. That has to play on DJ. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I think definitely plays on DJ that I can't stand, Mike, is, and I remember after the first week this year, after he fumbled, he had the 1 lost fumble, which obviously people were upset about, as they should have been. It was a bad fumble. But the first thing that you see on Twitter, Daniel Jones, 40 turnovers in his first 27 games, and that whatever it was, and everybody's talking about it, blah, blah, blah. But nobody puts in the context. Nobody says, well, the guy's only turned over 4 times over his last 8. And I hate when that gets emphasized because that has to play on Daniel Jones's head. And you don't want your quarterback playing not to turn the football over because it's limiting his potential as a quarterback. He's not going to take some shots that you would like him to take as a quarterback. And it goes back to what we said earlier. I almost want Daniel Jones to throw some interceptions because that means we're taking more shots to create some big plays. We have to create big plays to win football games in today's NFL. And if he throws a couple of picks, but he puts the ball in the end zone 2 or 3 times, it's worth it to me. I don't want to be a team that's playing not to lose. So I almost want him to throw a couple more interceptions, as crazy as that may sound.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember like Eli Manning's career under Gilbride, it's like there were so many interceptions, but there were enough big plays to kind of like, the Giants had a pretty good offense back then. So like if you can have some interceptions, it's not going to kill you, but it depends. Like, you don't want to throw an interception in the red zone and whatnot. They're not all created equally. But if you have Daniel Jones just not even taking a chance, it's just your offense is going to go nowhere. Like I would rather see him throw interceptions. And I do think it's the turnover thing is overplayed. I will say that. And there should be context to it because he was a lot worse in his rookie year than he has been the past 2 years or, year and 3 games.
He's thrown 1 pick in his last 9 games.
Yeah. So, and I think the one was Ingram's fault, right? Is pretty much what it was. The Cowboys. So, like, I feel like you have to throw more interceptions, which is stupid to say. But if you're not, you're obviously not being aggressive enough. Like even Mahomes has thrown some very bad interceptions this year, and Justin Herbert has a couple bad ones. Like all these good quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers had a couple of terrible ones in a game this year already. So it's just I think the good quarterbacks all do it. It's just like, if you're not throwing any, you're obviously just not being aggressive enough. And we're seeing that based on, the Giants' points per game and things like that. The offense is not good enough right now. And a lot of it is because of lack of aggressiveness, which is fixable, which is the annoying part.
That you hit it right on that. That's what's so annoying is that it is fixable. Now, whether or not they could play good playing in that fashion, we don't know because we haven't gotten an opportunity to see it. But you got to unleash the shackles and you got to give them an opportunity. John, man, thank you very much. Jason Garrett shouldn't be calling the plays, period, at this point. Let Kitchens or Callaway, Ross Callaway, who they got from LSU, call Jason Garrett's offense and let Callaway implement his own plays each week. Listen, man, I'd be on board with it, John, for sure. It's not going to happen. Not this week, at least, obviously. They've already said that Garrett's going to be calling the plays, but I'd be open to it, man. At this point, you got to try everything you can because right now this season is going down the toilet. If we're being honest with ourselves. And this is a season where we really need to see what we have with Daniel Jones. And I want to give him every opportunity to show himself. And I'd be lying, Mike. I've been encouraged with Jones. I've seen things and I've said, yeah. I've said it countless times, Mike. And I really fear this. I look at Sam Darnold right now in the Carolina Panthers, and I say to myself, Mike, if he ends up in the right spot, he's going to be a good quarterback. He's going to win football games if Daniel Jones ends up in the right spot. And it may just be that that's the way that it works out, because you know as well as I do, in today's modern day NFL, it's very hard to win after you pay your quarterback on the second contract. And if we're not winning football games, as much as I like Daniel Jones and I want him to be the guy, how can you justify re-signing him to a mega contract if you're not winning football games with him on his rookie salary? Mm-hmm. So I think I think it's a lot more in the Giants than Jones himself. I'm not saying Jones is Mahomes. He's not. But it's a lot more in the Giants than Jones himself, because the Giants, from the start, have set Daniel Jones up to fail. When they drafted Jones, the offensive line was a mess. Pat Shurmur was part of the drafting process of Daniel Jones. I think Shurmur probably had more influence on that pick than Dave Gettleman, because he fit Shurmur's scheme so well. And then you fired Shurmur a year in. You set Daniel Jones up to fail. And I say to myself as a Giant fan, Mike, I'm like, if this guy ends up with the Broncos with Shurmur, if this guy ends up on the Colts with a good offensive line, or if this guy ends up on the Steelers, we all know that they get the most out of their players. I'm saying to myself, Mike, this guy's going to be a good quarterback. And the New York Giants are going to look like an absolute joke of an organization.
It does come down to structure a lot, especially with young quarterbacks. And when you take away his play caller in 2019 and Pat Shurmur and the guy who drafted him and the guy who, because I don't know if everyone knows this, but Pat Shurmur really brought the idea of drafting Daniel Jones to Gettleman, and Gettleman has admitted that in the past. So I'm not saying it was Pat Shurmur who drafted him. He's not the GM, but still, I mean, he had a lot of influence on that pick. And to get rid of him after 1 year of, yes, Daniel Jones turned the ball over a lot, but the Giants at least had an average offense in 2019. And your number one priority, especially when your quarterback's a rookie, is, do we have our guy? And then to get rid of Pat Shurmur, who, yes, wasn't a good head coach, but once again, you kept Gettleman, so you should have kept the head coach for 2020. And now we're in a situation where Daniel Jones's numbers are regressing, and once again they're making him play like Alex Smith, which is not what we want to see as fans. And I don't fear as much of the Sam Darnold thing happening here. I think Darnold is more naturally talented than Daniel Jones. Some may argue it, but you don't see enough of those backyard style football plays from Daniel Jones. He needs structure. He needs a good team around him, and the Giants are not going to give him that. I don't see it happening in the next couple of years. So can the Giants even afford to hang on to Daniel Jones for that long? Because as you said, you're going to have to extend them at some point. You can't give Daniel Jones the mega 4 or 5 year extension and still have a crappy team around him, because it's going to be the same thing. So yes, you could have a better play caller, but it's not going to solve everything. We may have a slightly below average offense if Jason Garrett was gone, but it's not going to put us near the top where we need to be.
Yeah. It's an unfortunate situation, but it's what the worst organization
They set him up to fail. You're right. It's sad.
John, man, thank you very much. Jason Garrett shouldn't be. Oh, I already read that one. I'm sorry. But thank you very much, John, man. I appreciate it, buddy. And FKO Fellings. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Jason Garrett was forced out of calling plays on a time he was head coach. Why would we pick him to call plays? Yeah, so he's referring to when he was with the Dallas Cowboys. Listen, I think it's just as much on the Giants as it is Jason Garrett. I think Jason Garrett, in the right situation, could be a good play caller. We don't have the type of team for him to be a good play caller. He's a guy whose offense needs to have a really strong ground game, which means you need to have a really strong offensive line to be able to hold blocks, to be able to throw the ball down the field like he does on, he wants to throw the deep exterior passes with the air Coryell scheme. But if you can't establish the run, if you don't have a good offensive line, it's not going to get the job done. So to me, it just didn't make sense. He didn't fit the personnel with this football team, and he's not the most innovative mind, and he's the type of guy. So I guess this is almost bashing him as an offensive coordinator. It is bashing him as an offensive coordinator, because if you're a great offensive coordinator, you should be able to make the most out of any situation. He's not that guy. He needs to have a specific type of situation for his offense to succeed. And in Dallas, it did, but he had that specific type of situation. You're talking about one of the best offensive lines in football. He had a great ground attack, and he had 2 good exterior wide receivers. We don't have that here. So it's a big reason why it has not worked.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple things to say about this one. I heard someone say this, and I think it was the Twitter Spaces yesterday, so I'm kind of stealing somebody's thunder here. But John Mara, I do believe, feared having 2 inexperienced coaches. His head coach, of course, was 38 years old, never been a head coach before. Special teams coach was the highest he's been. And then you have Patrick Graham, who I think was defensive coordinator 1 year for Miami, and like Brian
He was
Flores was
half
the
a year.
main
They
guy.
took the play calling duties away half a
Yeah,
year.
a half year of being like a defensive coordinator, and Brian Flores is probably the main guy calling the defensive plays there. So you already brought in two of those coaches that have the inexperience and the question mark. Maybe John Mara, and the coward that he is, unfortunately, said, I really need a guy who's established and who has head coaching experience, and he just went to Jason Garrett. Even though he wasn't, like, I shouldn't say the most qualified, he wasn't the best candidate, but he still went that way because he feared that, oh my God, I have two coaches without that much experience. I need a guy, like I need an adult in the room, as they say. And that could be part of it as well. And I also was going to say, I think Tony Romo in my lifetime is one of the most underrated players of all time, at least from when I started watching football.
That you're saying that, because I hate
it's
the
true,
Cowboys. But no, you're right. I actually always agreed with that. I always thought Romo was better than people gave him credit for. I'm
not in the big moments, but like still just overall very like just talented guy and very cerebral, as we know. And like he probably made up for a lot of the deficiencies of the Cowboys offense and the offensive line, and having Des Bryant and having DeMarco Murray run between the tackles and Ezekiel Elliott. Like they had all these things that we don't have. And I just feel like, not to say that Daniel Jones is not like he just doesn't change things at the line like Tony Romo did. He doesn't see the game at the level that Romo did. And I don't expect him to at 23 years old, whatever Jones is. But that's just the truth of the matter, is that Tony Romo saw the game at a different level, and it's probably like not helping Jason Garrett look any better as a result.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. But that's kind of a detriment, or that's a knock on Garrett, because he can't. Pat Shurmur, a guy like that, a better offensive mind, could get the most out of a quarterback like that. Mm-hmm. Garrett needs everything to be in place for his offense to really look good. Josh, man, thank you very much. Yeah, I agree. I did feel bad for him about a couple of seconds. It was about four and a half seconds for me, Josh, about Evan Ingram. After the whole stadium booed him off the field, I couldn't imagine what it was like. Yeah, and listen, man, I understand the frustrations by the fans, believe me. And I'm not saying it's not justified, but it did look like it really did affect him. And I can't help it as a human being. I felt a little bit bad for him. But yeah, the guy's just been bad as a New York Giant. Taha, man, thank you very much. I think DJ has top 10 or higher potential. I think Mike underrates his arm strength, and his arm talent is obvious, plus add running ability. I'll let Mike talk, and then I'll talk about it.
Yeah, the thing with that is I know like his deep ball numbers look good, but everyone's saying that based on 20+ yard throws, and that's not the deepest of throws. When you look at like 40+ yard throws, he's not looking as great as he does on the 20+ yard throws. And like with the whole arm talent thing and the arm strength, I see guys around the league, like, Justin Herbert comes to mind with this one, of making throws on the run and throwing lasers outside the pocket. I don't see Daniel Jones doing too much of that. Maybe that's not part of his game. Once again, he needs structure. I don't see Daniel Jones going outside the pocket and throwing these like laser throws, 20, 30 yards down the field that some of these other quarterbacks can do. Even Baker Mayfield can do it. He has a really good arm, in my opinion. So like Daniel Jones can throw the ball far. I don't know what it is exactly, why it doesn't correlate to when he's outside the pocket, but I want a guy that can make plays outside the pocket consistently and make these crazy throws on the run. And I don't see enough of it from Daniel Jones. I've seen it before. I know he can do it, which is why it's frustrating once again. But until Daniel Jones develops more of that, like just being able to play on the fly type of ability and make those throws on the run, I can't put him in like that top 10 potential type area, because once again, I feel like, and this is stupid to say because most quarterbacks need structure, but I just don't see him having like the talent to be a top 10 guy. Like just based on talent with quarterbacks around the league, I don't see him being top 10 because there are more talented quarterbacks than Daniel Jones, in my opinion.
I think that's a fair opinion. I do. I think that's a fair opinion. I think he could be a top 10 quarterback. I really believe that. I'm not saying
in the right situation. Yeah.
Yeah. In the right situation, I think he could be a top 10 quarterback. I really believe that. And I'm not saying he would be, but would I be shocked if he was with the Browns, if he was putting up really good numbers and winning football games? No, I wouldn't. If he was with the Cowboys, would I be shocked if he was putting up really good numbers and winning football games? No, I wouldn't. But the situation that he's in, and it's not really a knock on Daniel Jones, because I only think there's maybe 2 or 3 quarterbacks with this current football team, with the way that the offensive line blocked specifically last year, and in this scheme that could look great with this offense. I don't think there's many. Maybe Russell Wilson, maybe Aaron Rodgers, maybe Pat Mahomes. We've never seen Mahomes outside of an incredible scheme. But probably those guys, yeah. But those are few and far between, so it's not really a knock on Daniel Jones. Like I said, I think it's more the team itself than Daniel Jones. Do I think Jones, if he was in the right situation, could be a top 10 quarterback? I honestly do believe that. I'm not saying he would be, but I think he could be. But the problem is, Mike, we're so far away from having that situation for Jones that it's much like Eli Manning at the end of his career when we decided to stick with him, and it wasn't Eli's fault. We failed Eli with our drafting, but the timeline didn't measure up to being able to put a good enough team around Eli for him to be a successful quarterback, which is why we should have started the rebuild earlier than we did. So it's more knock on the Giants than Jones himself.
Here's a comparison I could make actually with that. So Derek Carr, as we know, I think he just won the Player of the Month or something. He's off to a great start with the Raiders, as we know. And Derek Carr, I don't look at him as like the most talented guy in the world, but he does throw a very pretty deep ball, which is what Daniel Jones does at a high level. Now you look at the Raiders, their roster is probably better than ours, but it's not like significantly better. I think a lot of it does come down to coaching and things like that. But the thing is right now, I looked this up the other day, is that Derek Carr has the most deep ball attempts in the NFL. And Daniel Jones has like 7 on the year. He's behind like Taylor Heineke. Like that's how bad it is. So if they let Daniel Jones play like Derek Carr, yes, it helps to have Henry Ruggs running a 4-2, whatever the hell it was. But like if they let him play like that, then maybe he does put up Derek Carr type numbers. And the Raiders offense has been very good so far. It's like, you know what I mean? Like the Raiders offense is not so much more talented. Yes, we don't have a Darren Waller. That would help a lot, but it's not so much more talented than ours where we can't feasibly have Derek Carr or have Daniel Jones play like Derek Carr. Like that's my problem. I don't know what it is. It's probably a coaching thing because it's not like the Raiders are that much better than us.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The Raiders offensive line going in, most people thought was a joke. And they've been the surprise team of the NFL. Olivia, thank you very much. If we draft a quarterback, I would go for Matt Corral. I'm going to be honest. I have not done a ton of research on next year's quarterbacks. I've seen a little bit of Malik Willis. I know a lot of people talk about him. I've watched Spencer Rattler. I've not been impressed so far from what I've seen out of him. But from everything I hear, and this is just what I hear right now, and that may change over the course of the year, most people think this is not a quarterback-rich draft class. And if that's the case, Mike, and I've said this several times, I don't want them to force a quarterback pick. I would sooner go another year with Jones than force a quarterback pick in next year's draft because you're making basically a 3 or 4 year commitment to that next quarterback, especially if you'd have to couple picks to trade up to get the guy. I don't want that. That's something that actually scares the hell out of me going into next draft. If we bring in a new GM, are the Giants going to force a quarterback pick? And we talk about the situation. Well, you use those picks. It's not like we're going to be able to spend a lot of money in free agency with all the money we got tied up. So if you use those picks to trade up and get a quarterback, or you use your first round pick to draft a quarterback, you're bringing in that quarterback to the same crappy situation that Jones is in. And unless he's Pat Mahomes, unless he's Russell Wilson, which he's probably not, it's going to be hard for him to succeed. So I do not want the New York Giants to force a quarterback pick next year.
I agree with that. Yeah, I just feel like if you do force a quarterback pick and he's not the guy, you're putting yourself another 2 or 3 years back potentially. So, I think some people speculate, myself included, that they kind of had to force a pick with Daniel Jones because, they took Barkley in 18, and then they realized like Eli's probably not the guy anymore going forward. And then 2019's class came up, which was not a rich quarterback class. It was kind of Kyler Murray, then big drop off. I mean, some people like Haskins, of course, but like, after Kyler Murray, there wasn't really any like franchise quarterback for sure type of guy. Even Kyler Murray had his questions coming out. So yeah, I don't want to be in that situation again here with a draft 2 years later or 3 years later, where the quarterback class is not looking that great so far. Things could change, of course, but so far it's not looking like there's a guy that stands out right now. So I do like Malik Willis. I've seen some of him. I haven't seen much of Corral, but I will do more research as the year goes on, assuming that we have a bad record, but we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully we win 14 games and we don't got to
right.
John, man, thank you very much. When do you see Ellerson Smith making his debut? I have not heard any updated status on Ellerson Smith on the IR. I have not. Somebody came up the IR today. Who was it?
John Ross or no?
Oh, that was it. John Ross. Yep, that was it. So hopefully Ross gets to play this week. I don't know if he's gonna or not, but with all the wide receivers banged up,
there's your Henry Ruggs right there, John Ross.
There you go. Good call there with John Ross. But yeah, I haven't heard an update on Ellerson Smith. I would think it's at least feasible that he'd be back before week 6. Otherwise, they probably would have put him on the PUP list. But we'll see. But yeah, I haven't heard much about Ellerson Smith so far. Mike,
they should play him. I haven't heard anything, but they should play him when he's back. I don't see why not. Yeah, it's like what's Lorenzo Carter doing for you to not put Ellerson Smith on the field?
Yeah, and it's not like Shane Zimenez has been killing it either. So why not give him at least some opportunity? I agree with you. Jonathan, thank you. He says, if the Giants have 2 top 10 picks, do you go O-line twice? Or do you go O-line and edge and O-line again round 2? I think DJ is good enough. Thoughts? I'll start with this, Mike, and then I'll let you piggyback. One, it's impossible for me to answer this right now because I don't know which prospects are going to be there when we're picking. But I'll tell you this right now, Jonathan, and I'm a huge offensive line guy. I would have taken Slater. I was pissed when the Giants didn't take a lineman in this year's draft relatively early. I am taking 2 early linemen next year. I'm not saying they both got to be in the first round. I'm definitely, if with one of those two picks, I'm taking a lineman. If I'm the general manager for the New York Giants, we need to build up this offensive line. Would I be upset if they use both of them, depending on where it was and it fit the value? If they took two offensive linemen, no. I know that center out of Iowa, a lot of people talk about. They say he's like one of the better centers to come into the NFL in quite some time. You want to get him and another really good tackle. A lot of people talk about Evan Neal out of Alabama. I wouldn't be upset about it because I want to get this offensive line situated. But again, I think it comes down to value. We definitely need an edge. We're talking about starting Ellerson Smith, the 4th round pick. We definitely need a high impact edge for this defense going forward. So I definitely would not be against that, though, if value met need to take 2 early offensive linemen next year.
That's what it is for me. If the value meets it, then sure. My thing is, though, if Andrew Thomas does play well this year, which he has, if he finishes out the year playing like this, then we'll have our franchise left tackle most likely. And then you have the right tackle spot, which has to be addressed. But it is hard for me as a, once again, big positional value guy to spend a high pick on an interior guy, unless he's like Quentin Nelson level. Like if he's supposed to be like a Hall of Fame level
maybe
guard or center. Yeah, that's fine with me. Like I will say we have 5 picks in the top 3 rounds next year. I would love to see at least 2 of those picks address the offensive line. I would like to see that personally, whether that's in the 2nd round, 2 in the 3rd round. I don't know, but I want to see 2 of those picks allocated to the offensive line because they got to get some people in here because we're taking in guys off the street, as you guys know, and it's just not how you build an offensive line, at least successfully.
Yeah, no, and you need continuity. And this is now the 4th new guy. It's amazing, Mike, when you think about it. This is the 4th new guard playing next to Andrew Thomas this year in 4 games.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's crazy, and I know, and it's not even really not. It's bad luck. There's been injuries, but the 4th new guard playing next to Andrew Thomas this year. It's crazy, man. Mike, man, thank you very much. Parcells told Sims keep throwing. Yeah, talking about in terms of being aggressive. Yeah, I mean you have to. It's the same thing with Eli Manning. Eli Manning threw 5 interceptions against the Vikings the same year he won the Super Bowl. It's like a shooter in basketball, Mike. Good shooters keep shooting. You got to give your quarterback an opportunity to make mistakes. Chris, man, thank you very much. I'm depressed like the rest of you. But when you look at where we are, I'm sorry. When you look at, we were a handful of mistakes from being 2-1. I'm not giving up. Let's turn this blank around. Love your positivity, Chris. I really do. The way I look at it, and I'm not giving up on the season yet. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be tough sledding. But that's the way the NFL is, though. That's the way I look at it, and that's the way it's been for us for far too long. You can look back at 2019, Mike. I remember, I think we went 4-4 over our last 8 games. We started off really bad that year. We went 1-7 the first 8, and there was 3 games over that last 8 where we should have won. I think we were up by 14 points on the Eagles, and we blew it at halftime because Shermer came out with a horrible game plan. Gano, ironically enough, with the Panthers, made a 63-yard field goal, and the Colts we had on the ropes when they had won 7 straight. You can look at each individual year, Mike, and say to yourself, if this went this way, if we didn't have bad luck here, we'd win 8 or 9 games. That's the way it works in the NFL. The difference between 5 and 10 wins is very small. It's why they say that football is a game of inches. The difference is, Mike, when you see this happening consistently year after year after year after year, it means you're a bad football team because good teams find ways to win. That little, Adore Jackson, on a good football team, they come up with that interception.
Oh, yeah.
Bad football team, they don't. You make the best of your opportunities, and it's been far too consistent now for 5 straight years where the New York Giants don't win the little things in these NFL games and they lose. So I love the optimism, but I've seen it too consistently for the last 4 or 5 years for me to be like, yeah, if this thing went this way and this thing went that way, we'd find a way to win. I look at it, unfortunately, and I'm a glass half full guy. I've gotten to the point, Mike, where I look at it like, they don't go that way. I'm expecting this little thing to go wrong this way, and we're going to find a way to lose the game.
Oh, yeah. It's like when Heineke got the ball back on Thursday, you knew it was going to happen. When Matt Ryan got the ball back on Sunday, you knew it was going to happen. Like this team is just, it's something rooted in this organization now where it's just they don't know how to win. I don't know how you fix it. And I do agree. I agree with a lot of what you said right there. I think it's right on because you can say that for every single team. If this happened differently, if this went differently,
that's the way football is.
Exactly. I do see where people are coming from with that, but at the end of the day, there's just a team that wins and a team that loses, and we find a way to lose these games consistently. You can't win all of them, but we find a way to lose more than just about anybody on these close plays. And it's just, I don't like looking at one or two plays and being like, that's why we lost. And once again, you scoring 14 on Atlanta's defense is why you lost. It's not because of like Adoree just dropped the ball. It would have helped, but if you scored 28 points on offense, wouldn't have had to worry about it.
And the thing that was so frustrating about that game, Mike, we moved the ball so well 20-20 against Atlanta. We moved the ball well. We just couldn't score because when we got in the red zone, we beat ourselves. And that was what was so frustrating. And I mean, it's not just that game. It's been, the last 2 years under Garrett, we just go out in the red zone. Let's see what we got here. Christopher, who would you have hired instead of Jason Garrett? Oh, wow. Now, I'll be the first to say when they hired Garrett, I didn't hate the hire. I understood the hire. I wouldn't say I was ecstatic about it, but I didn't hate the hire. I'd have to think about that because, I mean, obviously most people are going to say a guy like Eric Bieniemy, but he's not taking a lateral move to go to the New York Giants. So,
I have a broad answer for this. I would just say hire a West Coast scheme type of guy.
100%. That's what I was thinking.
Similar to Shermer.
Maybe Shula. Maybe just keep Shula. Maybe just keep Shula because you couldn't keep Pat Shermer. But absolutely a West Coast style offense because that's what Daniel Jones was drafted for, and that's the scheme that I think he fits best. So I'm in complete agreement with that. A West Coast style.
I don't have a name for you. I do like certain guys. Like I like Byron Leftwich. I like even Kellen Moore with the Cowboys has done a great job. Joe Brady, but they're all lateral moves. They're not going to come to the Giants just because we need them.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's so hard to answer because your OC generally will not be a lateral move. It'll be somebody that you promote from within your staff or gets a promotion from somewhere else. Alphabet, thank you very much. The top 2 reasons why the Giants are not 2-1 are stupid penalties and balls hitting guys in the hands and bouncing out. DJ is not the issue. Nobody's saying that DJ is the reason we have lost these football games. No way. As a matter of fact, DJ is the only reason why we should have beaten Washington.
Yep.
He was the only reason we were even in that football game based off the way that the defense played. That was one of Daniel Jones' best performances as a pro when you factor in the team he was going up against, the pressure in that game. So I agree with you, man. I don't think that Daniel Jones is the reason we've lost any of these games. I think the problem some fans see is he's more often than not the reason why we could win them. But he's not losing us football games. And you look at last game, Mike, and I'm not pinning the loss on Jones. I don't think outside of the fumble, which I don't know if more is on Price or more on Jones, but it did hit both the Jones' hands. But outside of that, Jones didn't make any, horrible plays. But you look at the game last week, Mike, Eli Manning in that spot finds a way to win that game. When it's 14-14, you get the ball, and you have an opportunity to go down the field, and you got to go 40 yards to kick a game-winning field goal. Eli Manning finds a way to win that game. And Jones, I'm not trying to bash Jones because I like Jones, and I don't think it's all his fault. I do think he's put in a really tough situation. But at the same time, I do see what some fans see. If he's going to be a franchise guy in a spot like that going against the Atlanta Falcons with that defense, you find a way to put some points on the board. I got to be fair.
Yep. Oh, I agree 100%. I think, in that year where we won the Super Bowl in 2011, how many game-winning drives did Eli have that year? Like 7?
Six or 7.
It was insane. Like every time.
And I don't want to compare him to Eli that year because that year, I say it all the time, like that year, and maybe I'm biased as a Giants fan. I know the statistics don't show it, but when you factor in all the lack of support that Eli had with that team, that's one of the greatest years I've ever seen a quarterback have. With all the great moments with the 2-minute drives late in those games with the lack of support. So I don't need him to measure up to that, but he's got to have some moments where he finds ways to win some of these football games.
Yeah, I do think Daniel Jones has to be more clutch. I keep using this stat, and I will use it until it changes. Daniel Jones has the same amount of game-winning drives as Josh freaking Rosen. Like, that has to change. At some point, Daniel Jones has to have one of those 2-3-minute drills and lead us down to victory and get us in field goal range rather than have the other team. Because we had a chance this week, as you said. Like, it really turned around because Nate Solder gave up the sack, and there was a penalty as well. But we had the Falcons like kind of where we wanted them. We were on the 50-yard line or so with like a minute left in this game, and then it all went south. But like we had a chance. Jones got the ball back. So like we had our chance. We just couldn't for some reason, I guess because of the Nate Solder and the penalty. Just stupid stuff happens to this team all the time. But the opportunity was there against the bad defense, and we just couldn't get in field goal range.
Yeah, and not all that's on Jones. Some of it definitely falls on the play calling and the line, I'm sure, and everything else. But you got to find a way to win some of these games. I mean, period, end of story. Pandemonium, man, thank you very much. Chris, scared to death that Judge is true to his word and is really taking these games as an extension of preseason and is just experimenting. Mike, I don't know if you remember that quote before the year started. I was furious as a fan.
I don't know about this. Tell me.
Yeah, before the year started. Okay, so last year that makes more sense because last year you didn't have a preseason. It was your first year as a head coach, yada, yada, yada. It's why I gave the New York Giants so much rope last year. Going into the year, I said I expect them to suck the first 8 games, and hopefully they start to grow after that because of all the factors and everything else. This year, there's no excuses. And I'm not saying that this has any relevancy in terms of them getting off to an 0-3 start, but Joe Judge elected not to play his players in preseason. And before the year started, Joe Judge said the first couple of weeks are going to be an extension of the preseason, almost like using like a built-in excuse for the team to come out looking sloppy. If you're head coach in the NFL, your team, and of course, your team should be getting progressively better over the course of the year, but your team's got to be ready to go day one. This isn't baseball, Mike, where you could lose your first 5 or 6 games and it really doesn't matter and you can flip the switch and go on a winning streak. Each game in football means so much. So when he said that, Pandemonium, I'm in complete agreement with you. I didn't like when he said that.
Yeah, I like the baseball analogy. I think the Oakland A's started like 0-7 this year, and you can work your way back in 162 game schedule, So it's stupid. I don't know how you can say that as a head coach. I know there's no longer 4 preseason games. We had 3 this year, I believe, but like that is just terrible. I don't know why he said that.
And to the contrary, Mike, and I know you're a big baseball fan, it could go the other way too. The Mets started off like 11-0 a couple of years ago, and they won like 70 games. I hate them.
Right.
Cruz on, man. Thank you very much. Says outside of Herbert, none of these quarterbacks are playing better than Jones. Not Burrow, Tua, or the horrible. Well, Kyler Murray is. Kyler Murray.
I'd say Burrow's been off to a pretty outside of that one game.
He's got a lot of picks, though, right?
Yeah, definitely. But at least he's throwing the ball downfield. I'll take it.
Yeah, well, that I think that's more in the play calling though. But some of it's got to fall on Jones too. Probably he's got to take some more shots down the field. But I think some of it's definitely on the play calling. But Cruz, for the most part, since Jones has been drafted, yeah, I mean, out in his quarterback draft class was obviously horrible outside of Murray. The following draft, you had Herbert, who's obviously been really good. Outside Tua, Burrow.
Yeah.
And that was really it, right, in terms of impact quarterbacks. Yeah. And then this past year, they're all rookies. So, you're not really getting much of a feel for them so far. I would say Herbert and Murray are really the only 2 high-impact quarterbacks since he's been drafted.
I would take Herbert. I would take Kyler, of course. And I probably would take Burrow over Jones right now. But it's close. But I would take Jones over Tua. I'm not really a Tua guy. I feel like, I would stick with Jones in this situation. Maybe that's stupid to say, but we'll see what Tua does.
I'm not a Tua guy either. I hated the way the Dolphins handled that last year.
That was stupid.
Tua when they benched him. Oh, I hated that.
Yeah.
Skywalker, and we're going to go live for about another, 15 minutes. I don't want to keep Mike too long, and I got to eat dinner, but I'm going to try to get to as many questions as we can. By the way, we're going to be live on Mike's channel next week. The link is in the description below. MikeTooNice, we do this show every week on each other's channels. Just been a little slow the first couple of weeks because he was on vacation and everything else. Skywalker, man, thank you very much. I really hope we don't lose the locker room. Is that something you worry about, Mike?
Yes, I've seen it before. We've seen it, and we're getting Kenny Golladay kind of worked up against Jason Garrett. Some of these quotes from one of Jason Garrett had a quote today was like, "Why don't you ask Joe Judge about why not being aggressive on 4th down?" So we're seeing some finger pointing going on. It does concern me, and I don't know if it'll get to 2017's level, but losing that many games, I feel like showing up to your workplace if you're an NFL player as what could be a 2-8, 1-9, hell, even 0-10 team at one point this year, that's got to be a very tough environment. And I don't know how it's going to go because the Giants had expectations this year. I could see if you're the Jets, the Jaguars, teams that had little expectations. But when you had playoff aspirations and come into your workplace at, once again, 2-8, 1-9, I don't know how these guys are going to react to that because there are very good people in this locker room, but there are some outspoken people. We've seen Jabril Peppers speak out about his role as well. I don't know how bad it's going to get, but yeah, it's absolutely a concern for me right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern for me too, because you think about Joe Judge, you think about how much of a disciplinarian he is, how much he puts on these guys. It's one thing to go into the year, with that attitude and working your guys that hard. It's one thing to go into last year when he's a brand new head coach. You have a young team with low expectations, but when you have a team with these veterans now that are coming into the year with playoff expectations, you start say 1-9 or 2-8. That is something that definitely creeps into your mind, especially When you start to hear things like Saquon Barkley coming out and basically saying the players need to believe in the scheme, you see Kenny Golladay yelling at Jason Garrett already on the sideline. That's something that has to at least worry you a little bit if you're a New York Giant fan. I don't think they're close to that yet, but down the line as this season progresses, if they don't start winning football games, I definitely think that's something that you could worry about.
And Chris, let's say you're a Giants player. You're one of the better players on the team. You're paid handsomely, and Joe Judge is making you run a lap when you're 1-9. And you see the way Joe Judge is coaching right now. I'd probably say you're one of the worst coaches in football right now. You think
run
I'm
a
running
lap
for you? Right, exactly. You run a lap too. Like I feel like there may be some of that disconnect. I don't know. I mean, I am concerned about it because once again, this could be 2-8, 1-9 by week 11 or something. So we'll see how it goes. But I do have a level of concern for sure.
Brian Lewis says draft the center from Iowa. Yeah, I was talking about him earlier. I think he's definitely a target. I actually saw, and I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but I actually saw a mock where he went 5th overall of the Giants like a week ago. Like he's being mocked really high. So, and Mark, man, thank you very much. If Baker and DJ swap teams, DJ Pro Bowler, Baker bust. I don't think that's crazy, Mark. I really don't. If you put Baker and I think Baker Mayfield's a pretty good quarterback. I think he's a good leader. I think he's a guy that guys definitely rally behind. I think it was probably the biggest reason why the Browns were attracted to Baker when they drafted him 1st overall was more so his leadership skills than anything else. But you put Mayfield on this Giants team, he's not good.
He's not as good. That's for sure.
He's not good. And I do agree. You put Daniel Jones in the Cleveland Browns situation, that's like Disneyland for a quarterback. I mean, you look at that offensive line, Mike, you look at that ground attack, and he's certainly got enough weapons over there to succeed. I agree with him. I'm not saying Pro Bowl, maybe, but he's definitely a good enough quarterback to win a lot of football games with the Cleveland Browns.
I'm trying to envision Baker Mayfield as a Giant. I don't think it would have gone that well. I will say I think Baker is more talented than Daniel Jones, but it ain't by like a whole lot. So, yeah, I think if you switch
the media. How do you think Mayfield would have dealt with the New York media?
I was just going to say, John Mara would have never drafted Baker Mayfield. So this is like a hypothetical I don't have to worry about. And that's kind of why how I stupidly went from wanting Mayfield to Josh Rosen, because I'm like, you know what, Josh Rosen is more of a Mara guy. So like that's probably going to be the outcome. But I love Baker Mayfield. I wish he was a Giant.
Say, I was a big Mayfield guy the night of the draft. I didn't like him after what he said to the New York Giants, but I liked him the night of the draft.
He's easy to root for if you're a Browns fan, but like I could see why. He's a bit outspoken and definitely took an unnecessary shot at our quarterback. So, you know, I could see why Giants fans don't like him. I get it. But I've loved Baker Mayfield. That's kind of how it is for me. I just love him as a player.
No, listen, I definitely see the attraction. Sergio says, I'm not sure why, but I hate the 3-4 defense for some reason. 4-3 seems so much better in my opinion. I get asked this question all the time, Mike. I don't know if you do. To me, it doesn't make much of a difference. To me, it's the coaching staff and it's the personnel and it's finding the right players to fit said scheme. I look at some of the best defenses in football. A lot of them are the 3-4. A lot of them are the 4-3. It's a matter of putting the right players in the right situation and having the right coaches there to make them succeed. Now, each defense is a completely different philosophy. The 4-3, you're not blitzing as much, obviously. You're relying more so on your strong defensive line, much like we did with Strahan, Tuck, OC, yada, yada, yada. Do you have a preference to which scheme, the 4-3 or the 3-4?
Nah, you can win with both. I just think it depends on personnel and coaching. You see the Buccaneers run a 3-4 mostly. The Rams run a 3-4 mostly.
Patriots,
It just depends on who you're. Yeah, the Patriots, Steelers. It's not. I think with Giants fans, it just goes down. It goes back to saying our glory days were with a 4-3. So we see this new 3-4, and we're probably thinking the 3-4 is the problem. When mainly it's the coaching and the players. I do think a 3-4 can work. We've seen it around the NFL. It's just that we don't have an OC, a Strahan, a Tuck, JPP on this defense. And that's the main problem, not the exact scheme that we're running.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. And when you run a 3-4, I think the thing with the 4-3, I think when you run a 4-3, it's basically you don't need as good of a defensive coordinator. It's basically if your defensive line could win up at the point of attack, you get pressure on the quarterback. With a 3-4, you need to be able to scheme blitzes and things of that nature. So it's more of a high risk, high reward type of defense because you're blitzing more. And I definitely could see why somebody prefers one to the other, but I think you can be successful in both schemes.
Mm-hmm.
Connor says, imagine we win our next two and the rest of the division loses. It'd be great. It'd be great. Well, that would mean we beat the Cowboys, so they'd have one.
It's not impossible. I'll put it that way,
Well,
it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know their schedule, but the Eagles, I know, play the Chiefs this week, but
I'm thinking about us winning too. I think we can win our next two if everything breaks right, which is stupid to say, but I think, the Cowboys and Saints are beatable. They're not the Rams, they're not the Chiefs. So Could
I
happen. I'm
just
not
want to
counting
get
on
to
it.
that Cowboys game, Mike, with a chance to
Yeah.
go into that game and be like, all right, if we could beat them, we get to 2-3. So like
Mhm.
there's some relevancy going into that game. So
Yeah.
I'm just praying we beat the Saints this week.
Yeah.
Steven, thank you very much. Says, what do you all think about Evan Ingram? I think he should not be a New York Giant.
Yeah, I've wanted it to work. I feel bad for him, but I just think it's kind of like this wound that will never heal with Giants fans. It's just we're not going to like him. That's the way it is. And I think Ingram's talented. This could be like the Sam Darnold going to a different team type of thing. Maybe Darnold or maybe Ingram goes to a different team and he's utilized correctly and actually stays healthy and they use him the right way. But I don't think it'll work on the Giants. Unfortunately, he probably has to go after this year.
I think it's one of those guys, like you said, Mike. I think it's all mental at this point with him, and not everybody's meant to play in New York.
Mhm.
And I do think if he was in the right situation and maybe a lot less pressure, maybe he could flourish and become a good player in the NFL. But I just don't think it's meant to happen here, man. It's been way too reoccurring with all the problems, and the Giants got to cut bait, and I think they will. I don't see him being back here next year. Pimp named Slickback, he says, looking at the all 22 film from the Warner video, it looks like Jones has become way too conservative. I think he's overthinking and worrying about turnovers. I watched that film as well, and I agree with you. It's kind of what I said earlier, Mike, that all this turnover talk, I don't think it's good for Daniel Jones because he's thinking in the back of his head, and it's probably not I don't even know if it's Daniel Jones more so than the coaching staff themselves drilling it into his head. Daniel, you can't turn the football over. We're going to play mistake-free. We're going to play grinded-out football. You can't make mistakes. It may very well be Joe Judge. You look at the opening press conference with Joe Judge. He talked about we're going to be a smash-mouth football team. We're not going to have this fancy scheme. And Judge, we've talked about it the entire stream, comes across as a very conservative guy. So to me, it might not even be Jones himself. It may be Garrett and Judge hammering it home. You got to play smart. You can't turn the football over.
I think it has to be more coaching. I mean, no, maybe not. I should rephrase that because at Duke, he didn't go deep that much. He
But his
did,
first
but
year,
like
he
not
slung
that
it, man.
much.
His first year
And
with the
then
Giants,
exactly
he took
that's why I
shots.
kind of retracted my statement because I'm thinking of 2019 and back to college. I do think a lot of it though is the coaching. I do because Pat Shermer kind of let him play freely, and if Jason Garrett and Joe Judge let him play freely, we may have seen more of the 2019 Daniel Jones. So like that is a thing. I don't know if you saw this, Chris. There was that one play. It was posted by Alex Wilson. I think it kind of got recycled of like that play where he was running to the right sideline, Jones, and could have thrown across his body to Slayton for a potential touchdown. Where that's
I
a
know
shot
the play you're talking about.
I would have wanted him to take that shot. I know it's a Cardinals sin. You never throw across your body, but like take a shot. Like I know Jones made the smart play, but like I don't know. I would have preferred to see him let it loose, honestly.
Yeah, I think it has more to do with the coaching than Jones himself because his rookie year, I thought he was too reckless with the ball. And now I think he's too conservative with the ball. And Alphabet Man, and he says it's hard for DJ to be clutch when his clutch touchdown pass bounces off the hands or his clutch touchdown run is called back. That's a great point you bring up, Alphabet.
Yeah.
It's a great point. I mean,
there's 3 games I could think of right there. This Falcons game, the penalty, and the Nate Solder giving up a sack. Week 2, Slayton drop, and then the Philly game last year with Ingram. That's 3 games where it could have went a different way.
He doesn't get help. Nobody's saying otherwise. He does not get help. We have a bad football team. Steve says, what do you think about ESPN saying Eli shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame?
Who said it? Like what guy said it?
I didn't see it, but I mean, Steve, you're talking to the wrong. I don't know what Mike's take is on this, but you're talking to the wrong guy when it comes to me. I mean, Eli Manning to me, he's no doubt Hall of Famer. The guy is top 10 in every major statistical category. The guy was a class act both on and off the field. Responsible for the 2 greatest drives probably in the history of the NFL, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, knocked off the undefeated Patriots, went on the road, beat Brett Favre in the playoffs, beat Aaron Rodgers when they had a 15-1 football team. I go down a laundry list. You talked about the 2011 season. Everybody says he's not elite. That season he certainly was, and he was consistent. And I think a lot of Giants fans took that for granted. Every Sunday, you knew he was going to suit up. And the guy came to play each and every week. He was great in terms of, pre-snap reads, everything else like that. Was a great leader of the football team. Did it in New York, probably the hardest place to do it in terms of pressure and everything else. No, is he Peyton Manning? Absolutely not. But is he a Hall of Famer when you look at some of the other guys that are in there? Absolutely. Can't tell the story of the NFL without Eli Manning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you look at the quarterback position, I think a lot of it, we look at accolades and playoff success. And we look at Eli's playoff success, it's like you have to put him in. Like there's no way you can keep him out, in my opinion. If Eli Manning had the same career but was a defensive tackle, maybe he doesn't get in. But the fact that he's a
Yeah.
quarterback and we pay so much attention to those Super Bowl, how many rings do you have, the accolades in the playoffs, and all the memorable Super Bowl drives and playoff victories he's had. You mentioned the Favre, the Rodgers, even beating the 49ers on like 60 pass attempts that one game. He's had so many incredible moments. So to me, he's a Hall of Famer. I think he will get in, and hopefully we can stop talking about that at some point soon.
And if Eli Manning didn't get in, which he will, probably won't be
Mhm.
first ballot with everybody that disputes whether or not he should be in. But if Eli Manning didn't get in, he would be there would be no players on the New York Giants that made the Hall of Fame that were on both Super Bowl teams.
Wow. Yeah.
Strahan was on one.
Yeah.
There would be no player that made the Hall of Fame that was on both Super Bowl teams. And Eli Manning throughout his entire career, a lot of people don't realize this, and maybe Beckham makes the Hall of Fame, maybe he doesn't. But up to this point, only one player he's played with that made the Hall of Fame, and that was Michael Strahan, and that was only for the first 4 years of his career.
Yeah.
So that has something to do with it too. He was never surrounded with the best of talent, but Eli Manning's definitely a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Charlie says the second the Giants fire Jason Garrett, I want to celebrate like we made the playoffs because Jesus, does he piss me off. And Charlie, man, I thank you again, man. Says just want to say the key to beating the Saints this week is shutting down Winston. Will have to beat us with his arm and his bad decisions. Yeah, listen, man, and I don't know how you feel about Jameis Winston. I think Jameis Winston is a damn good, in terms of just pure talent. He's a good quarterback, and they have a great offensive mind. Obviously, with Sean Payton, the former offense coordinator for the Giants, in my opinion, one of the best head coaches in the NFL. So he's going to come with a good game plan. But whenever you're going up against Jameis Winston, yes, you want to force him to make tough decisions. This is a guy that threw 30 interceptions a couple of years ago when he was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So if there's a team we're going up against this year, that is prone to turnovers, it is them. Jameis Winston is definitely not allergic to turning over the football.
Yeah, Jameis is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch based on just the unpredictability. He threw a touchdown pass last week being dragged to the ground by a defensive lineman and just threw it up for grabs. Like he will make some very stupid decisions. He is very fun to watch because of the unknown. But as you said, I do think Winston's very talented. He is talented. He has talent. He went first overall for a reason. And, the Saints, their recipe for success in their 2 wins, I think Jameis Winston probably had a combined 300 passing yards in those 2 games they won. They want to just run the rock with Kamara, 20 plus times. That's how they want to beat teams. The Giants do have to force Jameis to beat them and hopefully make a couple mistakes because that's the only way I feel we can beat the Saints is with hopefully a Jameis pick 6 and a fumble here or there. But Jameis can make a lot of plays there. He makes something out of nothing plenty of times, but he also can be his worst enemy sometimes and kind of throw the game away. So that's what we have to hope for.
Yeah, I think a lot of this game is going to come down to Patrick Graham, whether or not he could do a good job disguising coverages and trying to trick Jameis Winston into making a couple of mistakes. Pandemonium says, do you guys think that Pat Shermer was on to something when he would have benched Barkley in the 4th? I don't even remember.
What game was that?
Yeah, I don't even remember what he's referring to in terms of benching Barkley. I wish I knew what he was referring to. As far as Saquon Barkley goes, here's what I'll say about Barkley because I know he's a hot topic of conversation. It's very hard for me to be super critical about Barkley coming off the ACL tear. Has he been himself? Absolutely not. He's done a bad job at times in terms of reading holes. I do think he looked more explosive this past week, and I do think he was showing that he has more confidence in his body this past week. He made a couple of really nice cuts, but yes, there are times where he definitely misreads holes. I know a lot of Giants fans get frustrated that he's not the hardest of runners. They go back and look at Wayne Gallman last year. A lot of Giants fans missed that. I still think Barkley's a damn good running back, and I hope he gets back to his rookie year form. But so far, yeah, I'd be lying if I said he looks like his old self so far this year.
Yeah, it's crazy because even as much as I didn't like the pick, I mean, I was saying Saquon Barkley is the most talented running back in football just a year ago, and we've come so far. Now he's top 10. Like you can't really put him in the top 5 right now based on how he's playing.
Yeah.
And he did look more himself on Sunday. I expected a huge game from Barkley Sunday, so I was a bit disappointed. But he did show, like he had a play where he ran for like 14 yards. He did like a double jump cut to the right, like his his vintage jump cut, like putting a lot of pressure on that leg and making that cut. So he showed like some vintage Saquon stuff. But yeah, I mean he was used more in the receiving game, which was nice. But he just has not looked like that same guy. Let me ask you, Chris, because I know like you love Saquon, of course, watched every game in 2018. Do you think Saquon ever gets back to 2018 form or no? It's a tough question.
I don't know. I honestly don't. I think he could. Mm-hmm. but I don't know. I'm going to say yes, actually, Mike. I'm going to say yes. I think he can. I think if he stays healthy, I think he will. It just might not be this year.
I think I think ability wise, he can, but the problem is he's not getting 100 targets from Eli Manning anymore. He's not going to be used to that
It might
level.
not even be with the Giants that he does it.
Yeah.
He might end up somewhere else if we bring in a new GM. But do I think that Saquon Barkley will fully recover both physically and mentally at some point? Yes.
Yeah.
Will it be this year? I don't know. I've read stories that they say a lot of times those types of tears, it takes a full year of playing really to get into the flow of things. Adrian Peterson, everybody points to, and they said he had an MVP season. Adrian Peterson is another breed. I mean, he's an absolute freak. Do I think at some point Barkley could get back to that type of form? Yes. And if he remains healthy, I would be leaning that he will at some point. The question is, will he still be with the New York Giants? For me.
Right.
But I do think he could get back to that. The other thing that I want to bring up about Barkley, he's never really played in this scheme either because he didn't play all of last year. Like he kind of said in his press conference, the players have to trust the scheme. Maybe taking him a few more weeks to really get back into things, but not off to the best of starts. I'll agree there. RB says, call me a sucker, but I believe we're winning this week. I hope you're right.
Something the Giants would do, right? When we're all down, they would just go out and win this game against the Saints.
And give us that hope going into the Cowboys game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what the New York Giants would do. And I hope they do it because I want to have some hope going into the Cowboys game. We're going to get a couple more of these and we're going to close it out. Pimp named Slickback. As unfortunate as things are for DJ, though, the NFL is ruthless. He has to show another level because if I'm a betting man, we have a new GM and head coach unfortunately, that's the way the NFL works. It's not, they don't care about players' feelings. It's a business. And it's the next, the Jets did it with Darnold. It wasn't Darnold's fault. The Jets team was a trash bag. And obviously the hiring of Adam Gase didn't help him. So it's just the way the NFL works with the amount of money that quarterbacks make and the amount of money that you have to commit to them. Sometimes it's not the quarterback's fault, but sometimes they need to go to another place to succeed.
So much of it is building the right team and hiring the right coaches. You can run into a unicorn sometimes and get a Josh Allen and get a Justin Herbert and get a Patrick Mahomes where they're just so freaking talented where they can kind of make up for some deficiencies. But when you get 85 or 90% of the quarterbacks in this league have to have a pretty good supporting cast to at least show who they are. And we don't have it. And that's my problem. Like with even thinking about extending Jones right now, are the Giants going to be a good team the rest of this year? I don't know. I have my doubts. And even next year, I don't know. They might be clearing some cap space and getting rid of big contracts, might be hitting the reset button. So that's the problem there. You could find a unicorn, but there's not many of them. That's the problem here. You have to build a good
trees,
team.
Mike. They don't grow on trees. They don't. A pimp named Slickback says, we've given up 4.8 yards per carry. I see the Saints running a lot. They should. Yeah. I'll tell you right now, Sean Payton, if you're watching this, don't run the football. Because that is absolutely what they should do. They'd be foolish not to. They don't have their weapons, obviously, with Thomas out. Kamara is one of the better running backs in football. You definitely got to worry about him in the passing game as well. But yeah, they should, man. They should try to run the football as much as they can. My biggest concern
for Sunday with the Saints is Alvin Kamara. And it's like, hey, no crap. He's one of the best players in football. But we can't cover guys like that. Boston Scott kills us. J.D. McKissick kills us. Cordero Patterson kills us.
He kills us too.
What's Alvin Kamara going to do to us? That's my concern there. And yeah, he probably will have a great game, I will say.
I think about the last time we played the Saints. I think it was 2018 or 2019. We actually got off to a good start in that game. I think we had a 7-0 lead, and then we forced them to punt. And then Taysom.
That the game that Gallman fumbled, right? The home one? Or no?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. They had a big run at the end of the game, the Saints. They had a fake punt where Taysom Hill picked up a big play deep in their own territory. I worry about Taysom Hill too. And I just think Sean Payton is such a mastermind. But of course, whenever you're playing the Saints, man, Kamara's the guy. Kamara's the guy that you're worrying about. Levi says, harsh, maybe, but Deck should get benched one game. Who are you going to put in his place, though? It's not like
that
we got
Raymond Johnson's still here. He's still here.
But I will say he has been underwhelming. One of the more underwhelming players for me this year.
He might need a slap in the face. I don't know. I could see it.
Octave says, at the very least, the Giants look like they could have 2 top 10 picks if they keep on losing. Hopefully we don't have to draft the new quarterback. I mean, ideally, for me, Mike, and I said it earlier in the stream, for me, ideal world, we don't draft the quarterback next year. We fill the other holes. We wait another year. We hope Jones could progress. And if he doesn't, and if the next quarterback class is a really good one, then you go up and get your quarterback if you have to, or you select him where you're picking. Ideally for me, because then you have that situation that is set up much better for the guy that's going to replace Daniel Jones. That's the way I look at it.
That's why I love having those 2 high picks. You can be in a situation, there's so many options even, where you can pick a player with one of those picks, but also trade back again and get another pick for next year and kind of, I know you're kicking the can at that point, but maybe Daniel Jones needs another year. And hopefully, I don't think Jason Garrett surviving this year. I pray to God that's not the case. But if Daniel Jones doesn't have a good year 4 with a new offensive coordinator, I know we're speaking a lot in the future here, then I guess it may be time to move on, which isn't fair because it's only 1 year and 3 new play callers and 4 seasons for him. But like, you can't wait so long for a guy. And plus Daniel Jones will be on his 4th year of his, I guess, 5-year rookie deal technically. So I guess you could wait 5, but quarterbacks don't get that long of a leash, especially in 2021.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the offseason. Cruzad says having bad vision has nothing to do with his knee. No, I agree. His vision has not been good, Cruzon. I completely agree. I said that earlier. His vision's been poor the first couple of games. Maybe some of that has to do with the fact that the guy hasn't played football in a year, but his vision has been bad so far this year. There's no doubt about it. He definitely looked like a much different running back his first year in the NFL, not just physically, but his field vision. I agree with you.
It's kind of been Saquon so far, right? As a Giant, he'll break off, the big play, but he'll also have like 10 runs a game where it's like 1 yard, 2 yards, no yards, and it's too much of that. You want a guy who consistently can get 2 or 3 at least, every carry. So that is the downside so far.
Yeah. You could hear my stomach growling. You probably can. A put things like this. Just our luck. We're playing in the Superdome too. Yeah, I know they were able to find a way to get the game to play in the Superdome.
Yeah, it's a bad draw.
Even after the fire. And I think this is going to be the last one. Duncan, man, thank you so much, man. How would you feel if we hired Louis Riddick and Eric Bieniemy after this year? I feel like the NFL is dying for a massive market to take them, and the media will pound the table for New York if we're trash all year. I'll let Mike speak on this. It seems like a lot of people like Louis Riddick, and maybe it's because he works for ESPN. I know that he interviewed for the New York Giants job when we hired Dave Gettleman. I'm not a fan of Louis Riddick. I look at what Louis Riddick has said he would have done with this team. He said he would have drafted Saquon. He said he would have signed
Haskins. Oh, well,
no. Landon Collins to an extension. He said that he would have drafted Haskins. He said that he would have drafted Isaiah Simmons instead of taking a tackle. So I don't see the draw to Louis Riddick. The things that he said he would have done with this team, I think this team would have been in a much better spot. As far as Bieniemy goes, yeah, the only thing that I question with Bieniemy is the guy's had so many interviews and he's yet to get a job, but he works for the Chiefs. Obviously, a good offensive mind there. I know that Reed calls the plays, but just having familiarity with Reed, you would think he'd be able to bring that to the Giants. He's definitely a guy that I'd have my eye out on if I was a New York Giants fan next year in terms of being a head coach candidate for sure. Brady's another guy that I like, a good young offensive mind. That type of coach. I don't want to say any specific definitive names, but that type of coach. I do want a guy that's going to come in here as an offensive mind that's going to come in here for this football team next year if we do inevitably replace Joe Judge, which hopefully will not be the case. But as far as Riddick, not the biggest of fans.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head for both, honestly, especially Riddick. I mean, yeah, when he admitted he wanted, he would have taken Saquon, he would have taken Dwayne Haskins. Like this franchise would have been worse off with Louis Riddick, which is kind of hard to believe. And you said the same thing for Bieniemy. He was a very attractive name like 2 years ago, but the fact that he is not getting hired after all these interviews, it's like, what are we missing here as fans? Like, what's going on here? So I guess the attractiveness of him being a head coach is not what it used to be, but I guess I could live with it. I don't know. I'm not like the biggest Bieniemy guy because I know he kind of splits the play calling with Reed sometimes. But yeah, if you can't land a head coaching job after that many interviews, it's like, what's going on here?
There's got to be something. Yeah. But obviously, if they hired him, I'd be all aboard. From everything that you hear about him, he's interviewed with the New York Giants in the past. I do think that's the type of coach they're going to look to bring in, an offensive-minded head coach if they do replace Joe Judge. That would at least be my guess. There's no way I can know that, but that would be my guess. And we got 2 more. Taco says, hey, thoughts on Wilson, future right tackles. Real quick, Isaiah Wilson. We should have talked about that earlier. What did you think about that acquisition by the New York Giants?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about it. How could you not be? It's like the guy was a first-round pick, and he has barely played in the NFL. You can't teach that size, of course, and there are some things I like about him, just how powerful he is and how he moves. I think the hand placement was a big issue for him at Georgia, but yeah, I mean, if they can coach him up, which I don't trust the Giants to do. But if they can coach him up, we may find something here. And yeah, the whole Matt Parrott thing not playing over Solder kind of makes me feel like our developmental right tackle spot has an opening right now. I don't want to give up on Parrott, but if Solder is playing over him and the way he's looked, then Parrott must be really bad. So I'm fine with Wilson. It's a freaking practice squad, guys. So I say, why not take a chance?
There's no reason not to. That's the way I look at it. You're talking about a guy that's a former first-round pick. He's got ties to Sale. Sale recruited him while he was at college. He's got ties to Thomas. They played with each other at Georgia. I know he's got the off-the-field stuff, but he's on the practice squad. So I see no harm in it. Am I going to set the expectation super high? No. I mean, odds are he probably won't end up making a huge impact here with the New York Giants, but it's worth the roll of a dice for a guy as talented as he once was thought to be. Especially as desperate as we are on this offensive line. Marco, man, thank you very much. He says, how do you feel about the Mara speech at Strahan Day? How do you feel about the next Mara speech at Strahan Day? Well, I'm sure he's going to get booed again, especially if this team is losing. I don't know why I keep getting text. The thing that I'll say about that I'm worried about, and I think License Plate Guy brought it up today on Twitter, I worry about more Eagles fans being at that game, because the Giants might be like 0-10 or whatever. Hopefully that's not the case. And Strahan gets booed. I worry about that as a New York Giants fan. That's one thing I do worry about on his retirement day. But I'm sure Mara's going to get booed again if this team's performing as poorly as they have.
Mm-hmm. No, I think, yeah, Mara deserves it. I saw like a few people are like, oh, it's not nice to boo him. Like, no, I don't, I felt bad for Eli because he had to like kind of calm everybody down. But as for Mara, like, the heck with them. Like, you deserve it. You kind of dug yourself in this hole. So I don't have any sympathy for that.
Yeah. And Mike says Bieniemy has a past and bad at interviews. That's the thing. I think at this point, it's at least questionable. I'm rooting for the guy if he's a good coach to get the job, but I think that's something you have to question because he's been interviewed by so many teams. And last one, Octave says Dak Prescott to sometime and Dallas franchise tagged him for a year before he proved worthy of an extension. Might be in a similar situation with Jones. You also have Kirk Cousins, who played 5 full years, and then I think he was tagged twice with Washington before he then got a 3-year extension with Minnesota. So there are instances where they play out the full 5 years and then they play on a tag. There are instances, and I could see that playing out with Daniel Jones, where he does progress and get a little bit better, but the Giants don't feel like they could build the right team around him to give him a full commitment for a second contract. That is on the table. That is a possibility. And Taco says, if we lose, do you think we fire Jason Garrett? Look at Dallas. Maybe. I don't know. I don't have the answer for you. If they didn't fire him this week, Mike, I don't know. Are they going to fire him against a better opponent?
I say John Mara will give him another week because they play Dallas in week 5, so they'll give him another week. I don't think it's happening this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, and True Rappless, and thank you, True Rappless. What if Bieniemy is waiting to take over for Reed? If I'm Bieniemy, that's probably what I'm thinking as well. Do I want to take on this New York Giants situation? They fired a coach 3 times in 2 years at that point. He maybe feel like he's better suited to stay where he is with Kansas City, with Pat Mahomes, to be the heir apparent to Andy Reid. So that's something you got to think about as well if you're a fan of the New York Giants. But thank you to everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Went a little bit longer than I wanted to. I know I don't want to keep Mike on here way too long, and we're both hungry. Somebody said they heard my stomach growl, which it did. I'm surprised the microphone picked it up. But Mike, man, I just want to say, man, you did a great job. Always love talking New York Giants football with you. We're going to be live on Mike's channel next week. I'm really looking forward to this week. Hopefully the New York Giants could dig themselves out of this mess, find a way to get to 1-3. But you guys are the best community on YouTube. I say it all the time. Thank you to everybody for continuing to support both of our channels through the darkest of times of New York Giants football. And hopefully things get a lot better real soon. But Mike, man, close it out, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone being here, and it's tough. There's a lot of people that I've even seen in my comments that are like, I'm not letting this team, hurt me anymore. I'm gonna go, go shopping with my girlfriend on Sundays now. Like, there's people that already in September were saying that. It's honestly sad. I can't be a person like that because I'm just sick when it comes to football and sports. But I'll be watching them Sunday. It's too early in the season to root for losses. Absolutely not. Gonna hope they go into New Orleans and somehow pull it off, and hopefully Jameis has his, is in his giving mood and will hopefully give the Giants a pick 6 or maybe 2. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, we haven't really been doing these. I was away and we had the Thursday night game, so weird timing, but we'll be back next week on my channel. Hope to see you guys there, and I'll talk to you next time.
All right, everybody, be good. Thank you guys for tuning in. And as always, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up, and go into that description and subscribe to Mike. Be good, everybody.